Hi guys, today I'm in Canary Wharf in London and I'm going to be looking in a few videos at the reasons for the growth of this area, reasons for its decline, and looking at regeneration. So in this first video I'm out here at one of the docks and I'm just going to be talking you through the reasons why this area grew. So we're at South Quay at the moment, which was one of the old docks. As you can see now, it's been really regenerated. We've got lots of hotels and we've got lots of tall buildings, etc. As you can see also, I'm right on the quayside, and you can see that there's a few barges kind of at the side of the quay, etc. So after the Second World War there was a huge increase in industry in the UK, and obviously this being on the Thames and London, it grew on the river because it was near a very large population. Ships came up the Thames and they unloaded their cargo in little bits like this, little areas like this along the quayside, and loaded and unloaded a lot of cargo into London. So that led obviously to many jobs being created on the docks, and dock workers were loading and unloading cargo. We had lots of processing of the goods along the quayside, and that had a large domino effect for jobs in the area, whether that was services or whether shops opening, etc. So the area grew and employed many people. They were low skilled and low paid people, but the area was very busy and had very high employment. As you can see, we've got this area at the quayside now, which is very different, but in the past this is where the boats would have come up the Thames and they would have put the cargo on and off. So we can see here why it was, some of the factors that led for it to grow. Obviously London had quite a hard population, and so there were lots and lots of workers here to be able to get the cargo on and off the ships, and the area was thriving. And that was from about, after the Second World War until up to like the 1970s. So in the next video we're going to be considering why the area went into decline and what happened as a consequence of that. Hi guys, welcome to part 2, looking at regeneration of the Canary Wharf area. And as you can see, I'm on the opposite side of the wharf at the moment, looking at some of the barges on the other side, and I'm just going to talk to you about some of the reasons why the area went into decline. So globalization had a big impact on the area. Lots of factories that were located here making goods around this area started to see a huge decline due to the fact that there were a lot cheaper goods that were coming in from China and Asia, because labour prices were a lot lower, land was a lot lower, land was a lot cheaper. So it was very expensive to buy goods from the UK. So we started to import a lot of goods from abroad, which you might think was a good thing. But the second thing that happened was that containerisation and cargo ships got a lot bigger. And so as you can see, although this wharf looks quite big, and this it looks quite deep, it just wasn't big enough for the really big container ships that were starting to be developed, and the area really struggled to get the goods in. So if the goods weren't coming in, they were coming in further downstream, kind of out of the Thames, kind of towards Kent and Essex, on those sides of the river. And so these berths were far too small and the water's far too shallow for these big container ships to come in. So the area started to see a massive decline in the amount of containers that came in, and as a consequence to that, lots of jobs were lost, because obviously the people who were loading and unloading the cargo ships lost their jobs, and the people who were processing some of the goods on the ships lost their jobs. So this had a huge spiral of decline on the area, and any of the jobs that were related to that, if you didn't have any wages, then you couldn't afford to work in the shops or buy food in the shops. So they started to close down as well. So the area started to lose huge amounts of people migrating out of this area due to the fact that they couldn't find jobs. So what was left really was an area that was decimated essentially. So we've got lack of industry, lack of factories, lack of jobs, people are moving out, a lot of out-migration, especially of younger people and people with skills, and the area started to go into decline. And as well as that, the housing started to suffer as people didn't have enough money to kind of maintain their houses, and a lot of people, like I said before, left. So there was a lot of issues with this spiral of decline, and so this area of London was amongst one of the poorest, Canary Wharf where we are now, in the UK, due to the fact that it lost so many jobs. So that was the impact of globalisation and containerisation and large container ships, which the area and the port just couldn't deal with. Hi guys, welcome to part 3 of our video on globalisation. Welcome to a very misty and murky looking Canary Wharf. We can see here the very tall towers where the I think it's Barclays Bank, that one. I'm just going to talk to you about why the area was regenerated. So in the last video I talked to you about how the area went into decline and how there was a lot of derelict buildings and a lot of closed warehouses and closed factories, etc. And the area just wasn't doing very well. There was a lot of out-migration, etc. And so the government felt that they needed to do something to improve the place for the people, and the fact that, you know, it wasn't earning money and nobody was paying taxes. So in the 1980s, at the end of the 80s, the UK government followed a liberalisation policy, which meant that for the first time it allowed foreign TNCs to actually invest in the area, and especially in this area here, which is kind of now a centre for kind of finance and banking, etc. So the UK government allowed this to happen, and this area was obviously, like we said before, derelict. It had lots of potential. It was very close to London. We're not too far from the city. We're only a few stops on the train line. So it was kind of ideal land to redevelop. So the government put together something called the LDDC, which is the London Docklands Development Corporation. And this was set up, and it was also, the government was thinking about decentralisation of offices and banking and stuff in the city, to just so that there was more room. Because as we talked about in other videos, the CBD is an area that's very compact, and it's not a lot of buildings that you can kind of build outwards. You have to build upwards, and land prices are very high. That in the background there, that's the DLR, which was actually something else that was also built here, because we had infrastructure built as well as the buildings. We can see that just going past. So new buildings were built, as you can see here. This is one of the first buildings right in front of us here that was built, the Thomas Reuters building. And then that was followed by some of the very tall skyscrapers, which we can kind of see today. And new buildings were built, the area was redeveloped hugely, the landscape was improved, a lot of housing was built, which I might take you around to see in a little while. The DLRs you saw there that went past. City Airport, which is also quite close to here, was also built. So the government not only built the buildings, rebuilt the buildings and regenerated, but it also ensured that there was infrastructure so workers could get in and out, and people could get in and out to use the area, people who lived here and people who worked here. So as you can see, and if you've been here, you can see that it's pretty successful. The environment's improved greatly from what it was like before, especially after you know, the factories and the industries, etc., closed down. And gentrification happened, which meant that a lot of richer people moved in. The area's got lots and lots of high quality housing, As you can see here, these buildings are huge, you know, hundreds and hundreds of square meters of office space, etc. So it was very successful in, like I said before, attracting big banking TNCs and financial TNCs, and the area did take off, and the LDDC can be seen in many ways to be successful, because the area was very run down, and it's seen a huge increase in wealth in the country. It's brought in other investment. We see the DLR running back across the quay here. So we're inside the quay. This is one of the quays where the boats would have come up before. You can see newer buildings either side now, but this would have been kind of dock areas for the loading and unloading of ships. So there's still obviously quite a lot of wharf still here, but we've got cafes and bars and restaurants, and underneath just up here, I'm not sure if you can see that up there, we've got the underground shopping area, which I'm not sure a lot of people know is there, but lots and lots of shops here. So Canary Wharf's been very successful in terms of gentrification, and very successful in terms of bringing other investment to the city, and improving the knowledge economy, essentially, because we are kind of in the centre of business and finance, which, as you know, the jobs here are related to the knowledge economy, etc. So that was very positive. Hi again guys, so in this little part of the video I'm going to be assessing and talking about whether we think that the regeneration of the area was a success or not. And as we said in the previous video, yes it was. It saw a huge improvement from the 1980s. A lot of jobs were created in the knowledge economy, and which brought a lot of new investment into the area, very high skilled, high paid jobs, etc. So that was a success. It also had a trickle-down effect, whereas you can see here we've got a lot of restaurants and bars, etc. We've got the area of shops, which is also providing jobs for people and brings money into the area. And better quality housing, huge amounts of investment, house quality is improved, a lot of the older derelict buildings have been knocked down, etc. So I would suggest that overall, from a gentrification point of view and a regeneration point of view, it has been successful. However, we must also consider the fact that a lot of gentrification is not great for low-skilled people and local people, and that was definitely the case here. The local people who lived here in the first instance were low-skilled, and obviously couldn't take those jobs in the knowledge economy, etc. So that wasn't great for them. So that was a definite downside. And even to a certain extent, working in the shops, etc. Maybe just a lot of those older people, maybe those older males who were working on the docks, maybe couldn't get employment within the service industry. So that was a definite area where we've seen that it hasn't been successful. I think the other major area where we have not seen a success is in the housing, and the housing quality here is very, very high, and of course local people can't afford that housing, and many people were forced out of their houses as redevelopment happened, and a lot of people were forced out as rent prices started to go up and people just couldn't afford to live here. So for local people, I think that the communities have been disbanded, I think communities have been ripped apart, and so from a point of view of increasing investment, it's been good. But if we consider the impact on local people, I think that maybe we have to say that regeneration hasn't been as good as it could be. House prices rocketed, rents rocketed, and even though affordable homes might have been built, it's still, what's affordable? So affordable for one person is definitely not affordable for people on very low income jobs or no income at all. So overall, I think it has been improved. It's promoted London further as a global hub, but I think for local people and local people with low skills, etc., then I think that we have to question the impact of regeneration and the impact that it's had on their lives, etc., because I don't think it's been successful for certain groups of people, definitely. Although for improving London and improving London as a global hub, I think we have to say that it was very, very successful. Hi guys, and welcome to part 5 of this video where we're looking at regeneration of Canary Wharf. In this section we've just come out to an area just south of Canary Wharf, which is Tower Hamlets, and I'm just going to show you the impact of regeneration, or the lack of impact really, on some of the areas just surrounding the gentrification and regeneration of the area. And we're in Tower Hamlets now, and as you can see we are very close to Canary Wharf. We've got a Novotel here in the background, but as you can see in the foreground we've still got an awful lot of lower quality housing here all around, which is only within kind of a few minutes walking distance of the really expensive flats and the really expensive buildings and the financial district that Canary Wharf is. So we've still got an awful lot of disparity between rich and poor within this zone, even though, as we talked about in the other videos, the amount of investment that's gone into Canary Wharf, but we've still got a huge amount of inequality with housing and with the amount of money that people earn for their jobs, etc. So although we can argue that the regentrification and regeneration of Canary Wharf was positive, it still hasn't had a huge trickle-down impact on some of the areas around. And really you can't regenerate all areas, so although the area has been successful, like I said, we can see that there are still areas of deprivation, and the gap between rich and poor is still very, very big. Even somewhere like this in London, which is, a global hub and maybe one of the richest cities in the world, we've still got quite a lot of urban deprivation and disparity in a very, very small distance between two areas. And it also, we can see the evidence of this in life expectancy as well. In Canary Wharf we can maybe be looking at the average life expectancy being about 88, and in an area of Tower Hamlets we can maybe look at that being more towards 78 or 80. So there's quite a large impact or there isn't a large impact on people. So yeah.